This is a QR presentation for first responders and communications officers from Queensland Emergency Service Agencies. It replaces QR safety awareness for emergency services personnel. It has been developed to provide basic information to maximise safety during emergency response with QR. It's in two main sections: about the QR business, QR and emergency response, rolling stock and train operations, road transport, QR sites. For each subsection in QR and emergency response, information about QR's emergency procedures will be outlined, and then general safety awareness information will be provided. QR is one of Australia's major businesses. With 10,000 kilometres of rail lines, trains carrying more than 160,000 passengers a day, and all kinds of freight, QR is working in your area. But QR is not just a railway. It also has an extensive network of road operations, delivering freight to and from rail terminals. These can be containerised loads, bulk freight or small packages, delivered by QR or contractors in their own vehicles. There are many kinds of QR sites. Large, busy rail terminals with trucks, forklifts and trains working together to load and unload freight. Workshops with heavy machinery and industrial processes. Construction and maintenance camps. Marshalling yards where trains are shunted or carriages made up into train consists. Large office buildings with hundreds of workers. Smaller administration centres. And stations, from busy underground commuter hubs with attached shopping centres to smaller country stations. In some centres, these facilities are combined in a major QR precinct. Because of international transport security concerns and the nature of QR's business, there are always potential hazards and threats associated with QR's operations. Many situations might involve emergency service agencies, sometimes in a multi-agency response. Rail and road accidents involving passengers or dangerous goods. Derailments, collisions or spills and leaks may require evacuations, changes to rail timetables and environmental impact management. At QR sites, there could be industrial accidents involving machinery or hazardous materials. Again, leaks or spills. And situations like fire, flood, storms, vandalism or terrorism. Civil disturbances caused by external factors but affecting QR workers and emergency service agencies. QR's safety systems depend on working effectively with emergency services. Like the emergency services, QR has standard operating procedures for response to incidents that affect its business and its people. We have procedures for command and control, on-site management and off-site coordination. This presentation aims to provide some general information about working safely with QR during emergency situations. Responding to any rail incident is hazardous, and the initial presence of first responders increases the hazard count for two main reasons. Firstly, because first responder attendance on the rail network is unusual in day-to-day train operations, and secondly, because the QR network is designed to be managed remotely by QR train control centres in Townsville, Mackay, Rockhampton and Brisbane, operating around the clock. If QR train control does not know you're on the rail network, they cannot take any action to reduce the hazards you'll be exposed to. This means that in the first stages of response, your safety on the rail network is highly dependent on your comm centres talking to train control for advice, even if a train is not involved in the situation.
When we arrive or prior to arrival, we need to know whether there's amount of people on board, if it's a passenger train, if there's any dangerous goods on freight trains, etc. We also need to know whether it's safe, that rail know that we're there, and should we wait, or are we able to go straight in and do our business.
Our main interest is firstly and foremost where the incident is, access to the incident. Has QR been notified if there's a safety issue? And if it's a major incident, where's the staging point?
Throughout Queensland, QR have a number of sites. If we have a fire or an incident at those sites, there's certain information that we would like to know. Such information is any chemicals that are stored, any explosives, or any other dangerous goods that may be stored at those sites. It's valuable for the firefighters in order to do their job safely and effectively.
To help QR and their passengers, we need a clear line of command, control and communication. For that, we need to know who's in control, on-site and off-site, what they are doing and where they are.
Coordinating your standard operating procedures with QR train control is fundamental to your safety, the safety of others on the rail network, and for an effective response. QR train control is responsible for arranging stopping of trains in a specific area, making the area electrically safe to work from the overhead line equipment, OHLE hazard, emergency access points to the site and into trains, information about train loads and passenger numbers, additional workers and equipment to assist with response. First and foremost, first responders should clarify the location on the rail network and how to access it. Here's the QR recommended procedure for going onto the rail network. As you approach, contact your comms centre.
Vicom, this is Marburg 52.
Ask them to contact QR train control for approval to enter the rail corridor. Give details of your exact location, why you want to enter the rail network, and if there are any other people with you.
We're at railway structure SW4390U.
Contacting QR and will advise. Over.
Easy identifiers are the closest train station or the nearest road crossings. There are also markers on sleepers found every 100 metres, kilometre posts found at the side of the track near the sleeper markers, markings on bridge ends, or in areas with rail overhead line equipment, the structure numbers on the sides of the masts. If you can see the emergency site, assess it for any obvious hazards. For example, leaks, spills, overhead line equipment, and pass this information onto your comms centre. Comms officers and QR train control will work as quickly as possible to make the site safe and then communicate approval to you to enter the rail network, noting any specific hazards that they are aware of. Until you receive this approval, do not enter the rail network. Always assume that the trains are running and overhead line equipment and anything touching it are live and dangerous.
We have received confirmation from QR Train Control. They are aware that you're on site. There are no trains for 30 minutes. It is safe to proceed to the track. Over.
Confirm that, thank you.
Following approval to go onto the rail corridor, wear a high visibility vest or high visibility clothing and, if advised, post a lookout in both directions. As you move toward the emergency site, your comms centre should be able to give you information about who the QR contact will be and what time they are expected to arrive at the emergency site. For major rail incidents, a QR commander will be appointed to coordinate QR's response on site. Look for the red hard hat and high vis vest or tabard marked Commander.
They've no ill effects from the fumes or anything.
The QR commander will work directly with the agency commanders and keep QR train control advised of progress, including when the emergency response has finished and the emergency service workers have left the site. For major incidents, QR will have other team leaders and workers on site. These people will form the QR Incident Management Team and be led by the QR commander, in coordination with the police forward commander or incident controller. For minor incidents, a QR worker will be appointed to act as an on-site coordinator, to be the primary QR contact. If you arrive at an incident on the rail network before the QR on-site coordinator or QR commander, remember that QR workers are often trained for specific technical duties rather than leading emergency response. This means that it's likely they will not have all the information relevant to your safety. So keep in touch with your comm centre for safety information on the rail network until you are advised of the details for the QR on-site coordinator or QR commander. This information might be
such things as where the premises have been evacuated, any persons injured, the exact location of the incident, any supporting equipment or resources that we could obtain.
Basically what the incident is, how many people are involved, and what services are required to treat the emergency.
Is it safe for me to be on that site? Have I permission from Queensland Rail via our comms to be on site? The number of people that is likely to be required by the emergency services.
QR's response for rail incidents includes managing rail hazards for response, coordinating passenger management and removing them from the site, arranging repair to the track and infrastructure, restoring train services, coordinating rail investigation activities. QR Train Control will coordinate rail emergency response on the Queensland network, whether it involves a QR train, another company's train, or no train at all. The QR commander will be responsible for coordinating QR workers on site to minimise rail hazards for response, providing information to support first responders, and directing the QR response. On the rail network, there are obvious and not so obvious hazards that could put you at risk during emergency response. These include trackside hazards, overhead line equipment, OHLE, rolling stock and train operations. The next section highlights some practical tips for you at a rail incident site. As a general guideline, the safe working distance is 3 metres from the centre line of the railway track. If possible, increase this where high-speed trains operate between Brisbane and the Gold Coast, or the tilt train route from Brisbane to Cairns. Don't forget, your equipment could encroach on the 3 metre safe working zone. Wear high visibility clothing anywhere near the track. Look at the trackside environment. The ballast, the rock base that rail tracks are laid on, is a hazard in itself, difficult to walk on, and road vehicles can get bogged. Rails can be slippery. Points move without warning. Sleepers may be slick and greasy. So be careful of slips, trips, and falls. If you were ever caught on a track with a train approaching, there are emergency escape areas that may save your life. However, all of these are high-risk locations. In some tunnels, there are recess points that may help protect you. If you are caught on dual tracks with trains approaching, you may be able to lie face down in the hollow between the tracks. There is no room to stand between two passing trains. On a bridge, there is no emergency escape position. Remember, for your own safety, you should not be on the rail corridor without approval from QR Train Control. QR personnel cannot help keep you safe if they do not know you are there. Always keep continual vigilance to minimise risk. This map shows the areas of the QR network that are electrified, carrying 25,000 volts. That's mainly in southeast Queensland, on the North Coast line running north to Rockhampton and linking the coalfields with Mackay. The overhead line equipment is made up of the power lines and the structures that carry them, bonds and connections on the rails, substations and other infrastructure. You should treat all elements of the overhead system and anything it is touching as live and dangerous. If you see broken or damaged bonds, report them to your comm centre. Do not touch them. They may be live and dangerous. At 25,000 volts, almost anything will conduct electricity. And in emergency response, the legislated working distance from OHLE is 3 metres below or beside it. So keep aware of the positioning of your own equipment, water streams and pools of water, tapes, smoky fires, trees or branches, even other people. The 3 metre safe distance also applies to high areas near the overhead line equipment. If you're on a roof or an embankment, you may be encroaching on the 3 metre zone. There is no safe working zone directly above the overhead line equipment. Dropping something could be fatal. Climbing on wagons in electrified areas may bring you within 3 metres of the overhead. Machinery can get too close. So can aerials and light towers on rescue vehicles. Climbing on your own vehicles could put you at risk. In tunnels, live wires and other structures may be lower than in other areas. And in flood situations, you could be much closer to live lines than you would be on the ground. Railway sites and some trains, whether in a suburban or regional area, are often quite long. So you may not be able to see a carriage or other infrastructure touching the overhead lines. When overhead lines are down, stay clear of wires and anything they may be in contact with until the area is made electrically safe to work in by trained QR electrical workers on site. Remember, in emergency response, the legislated working distance from the overhead line equipment or any part of the rail electric system is 3 metres. QR is a legislated electrical entity and is responsible for managing the overhead line equipment for emergency response operations. However, this doesn't include other power lines belonging to Ergon or Energex. The electrical safety rule is that before anyone goes closer than 3 metres to the overhead line equipment, it must be de-energised, isolated and earthed. But this is not just a matter of flicking a switch. First, a section of the overhead lines can be de-energised remotely by QR train control, who will need to know your exact location.
We'll put that block on straight away and we'll get linesmen out there to isolate and earth it straight away.
Then, qualified QR electrical workers have to come to the site to physically isolate and earth the power at either side of the emergency site. It takes time and teamwork. QR will work as quickly as possible to make an area ready and safe for emergency response. QR will inform your comm centre when an area can be worked in and the conditions of that work. QR's on-site representative will show your commander the limits of the isolation. Something else to be aware of is that many QR trains have 1 or 2 pantographs that draw the electricity from the overhead line equipment to power the train. Once they are lowered, they separate the train from the overhead lines, although there may be residual power from the batteries under the train. In some circumstances, if you will be working more than 3 metres from the overhead line equipment and not under or between rolling stock, the overhead line equipment may remain live. Again, advice from QR train control will be critical to your safety. Managing overhead line equipment is just one part of managing your safety on the rail network. Train traffic is an obvious danger and can only be safely managed by QR train control. Unless QR has stopped trains and your comm centre has confirmed this, then trains can come from either direction on any track, irrespective of whether the overhead power has been shut down or not. On the rail network, trains can switch tracks. So after one train passes, another can be headed your way from the other direction. And though they're big, moving trains can be surprisingly quiet. If you need to stop a train in an emergency, stand to the side of the track and wave your arms above your head, or a light, or anything red at the driver. But remember, visibility from the train driver's cabin is very different from being in a car, and trains can take up to 2 kilometres to stop. Sometimes rail wagons carry wide loads or loose tarpaulins. Ropes, etc. could swing out and injure you. So stand well clear of moving trains. Remember, 3 metres from the centre of the track. By now it will be obvious that rail incident sites can be hazardous and that each response operation will vary depending on the situation. Safety at a rail incident site will depend on at least 3 things: having QR approval to enter the rail network from your comm centre, staying 3 metres from the track and the overhead line equipment, sticking to your lines of command and control. Remember that becoming a casualty yourself only makes the situation worse. As part of the national transport industry, QR doesn't just run trains. It also operates a standard vehicle fleet and road freight using marked QR vehicles and private contractors. General freight and dangerous goods are transported, so a traffic incident involving a QR road freight vehicle could present additional hazards. QR vehicles containing dangerous goods will display the standard dangerous goods marking or placards as specified in the Australian Dangerous Goods Code. Information about the dangerous goods products carried in each vehicle is available in the driver's cabin, in the driver's side door, and usually in a distinctive dangerous goods documentation pouch. In any road incident, normal traffic accident rules and procedures apply under police command. If able, road freight drivers will let their freight distribution centre know what's happened. QR freight coordinators will keep comm centres informed if they have relevant information. In summary, when responding to any incident involving the QR road fleet, remember, road vehicles can be QR trucks or private operators, general freight and dangerous goods are carried, QR vehicles will display standard dangerous goods placards when required, and the dangerous goods documentation pouch is carried in the driver's cab. QR controls many different kinds of sites, each with a variety of hazards. In keeping with Queensland workplace health and safety requirements, QR has standard operating procedures for evacuation based on the Australian standard AS 3745. Each site has a chief warden, the main point of contact for emergency services during evacuation. Each site has predetermined evacuation routes, fire escapes and assembly points. Some sites have security and fire alarms connected to stations and comm centres. If an emergency response is required, QR workers will also call 000. Depending on the site, the numbers of people affected by an emergency and their familiarity with the site will vary. Often members of the public, contractors and other visitors will be present. As with a rail incident, your priority is to identify the QR chief warden or on-site coordinator on-site and communicate through your comm centre and the 000 service. Some QR sites, like our office buildings and workshops, are familiar types of locations. Your normal SOPs will apply. Some QR sites are potentially more hazardous than others, so be on the lookout for heavy machinery, commercial supplies, terminal equipment such as forklifts, and the impact of dealing with crowds. Rail terminals, yards and stations can have moving trains and electrical hazards, so get your comm centres to contact QR Train Control before you enter these sites. In or near rail terminals and yards, be careful around stationary trains. They can be shunted and move quickly and violently without warning. Unless QR Train Control has given you an assurance, don't go between, under or over stationary carriages or trains. You need to go round with at least 10 metres clearance. The yellow line on the station platforms is for your safety too. Stand on the side that is further from the track. Where possible, get to know local QR people, facilities and procedures. The information will be useful in emergency situations. In summary, QR controls many different kinds of sites, each with a variety of hazards. Each site has predetermined evacuation routes and assembly points. Your priority is to identify the QR Chief Warden or on-site coordinator. So, bearing the hazards in mind, how do you keep safe when responding to an incident involving QR? On the rail network, the most important things are having QR approval to enter the rail network from your comm centre, staying 3 metres from the track and the overhead line equipment, sticking to your lines of command and control. At emergency situations on the roads or at other QR facilities, QR procedures allow for on-site management and off-site coordination. QR's procedures and the experience of Queensland's emergency services work together for the best outcomes for all our people and public safety.